Once upon a time, in a peaceful little village nestled among lush green fields, there lived an old father who led a quiet life in a worn wooden house. His wife had passed away early, so he poured all his love into his two sons. They grew up strong, hard-working, and eventually each built a life of their own. The older son followed in his father's footsteps and learned to repair motorbikes in a nearby town. With skillful hands and an honest nature, he quickly earned the trust of many. On sunny days, when people traveled more by motorbike, business was booming. The old man beamed with pride whenever neighbors mentioned his eldest son as one of the best mechanics around. The younger son chose a different path. He decided to stay in the village and opened an organic vegetable garden behind their house. Every day, he rose with the dawn to water the plants, till the soil, and care for each green row. His produce, grown without chemicals, fetched good prices and was loved by homemakers in the village. But farming is always uncertain. When it didn't rain, the vegetables wilted, and when it rained too much, they'd flood and rot. Though both sons were dutiful, hard-working, and had found their own way in life, the old man rarely felt at ease. On sunny days, he'd sit on the porch, stare up at the clear sky, and sigh. Not many motorbikes today. My eldest probably won't make much. On the other hand, when it rained non-stop, he'd grow gloomy. How will my youngest's vegetables survive in this weather? All this hard work might just go to waste. Day after day, he sat quietly in front of the house, watching the sky, guessing the weather, and constantly worrying. It seemed like whether it was sunny or rainy, there was always a reason for him to feel troubled. While villagers often said the two brothers were the pride of the family, the old man held on to his private worries, ones no one could understand or share. People began calling him the old man who worries too much, but he didn't mind. Still, if you looked closely, you'd notice something in his eyes whenever he glanced off into the distance, toward the town where his eldest lived, or back toward the garden where his youngest worked. There was always something lingering there, like he was carrying an invisible burden. But why? When both sons were doing fine, living good, honest lives, why couldn't he ever truly feel at peace? And then, one day, a chance encounter with a stranger began to change everything. One might think that old age is a time for rest and peace, but for this father, every passing day was filled with endless worry. Not because of poverty or illness, but because his heart was always overflowing with one thing, concern for his sons. On scorching sunny days, when the sun beat down hard on the red brick courtyard, the old man would often sit on the porch, gently fanning himself with a bamboo fan, eyes gazing far toward the town where his eldest son worked. While others rejoiced in the beautiful weather, he sighed with worry. It's too sunny. Who would ride their bike today and break down? If there are no customers, how will my boy make a living? He's probably sitting around doing nothing again today. He repeated that line over and over, like a habit, even when no one asked. A kind-hearted neighbor once tried to reassure him. "Your son is skilled, work comes and goes. That's just how it is. Don't worry so much." But the old man only smiled faintly and stayed silent. He just couldn't stop imagining all the hardships his son might be facing. And on rainy days, even just a sudden shower, his mood didn't improve. The sound of raindrops tapping on the old tiled roof made him all the more restless. Each time it rained, he thought of his younger son, toiling away in the vegetable garden. Rain like this will ruin the crops, soaked roots, torn leaves, pests. All his hard work this past week might be for nothing. He would pace back and forth across the yard like someone with fire in his chest. On days when it poured nonstop, he wouldn't eat, wouldn't rest, just stood leaning on his cane by the door, eyes fixed in the direction of the garden, even though he couldn't actually see anything. Only the deepening lines of worry etched on his aging face were clearly visible. The strange part was, in reality, both sons were doing just fine. They often sent money home, gifts, and handwritten letters filled with cheerful stories from the town and the village. But the old man still couldn't find peace. In his heart, the weather was like a balance scale. Whenever it tipped one way, he started worrying about the other son. And so, whether it was sunny or rainy, the old man never felt at ease. On one side, he feared no customers at the repair shop. On the other, he feared crop failure. Day after day, his mind circled the same loop of imagined misfortunes, none of which had actually happened, yet they kept his weary heart from ever resting. Everyone in the village knew him by the nickname, the Two-Season Man, because whatever the season, he found a reason to be sad about it. The children would even joke. "Wanna know if it's sunny or rainy today? Just look at the old man's face." No one truly understood why a father could worry so much. But then, by pure chance, something unexpected happened. A passing encounter that would open a new path for his weary soul. One early summer afternoon, just after a sudden downpour, the sky softened, and the canopy of trees in front of the old man's house shimmered a deep, rich green. He sat once again on the porch, his eyes heavy as they followed the lingering droplets clinging to the banana leaves. It was as if his heart had soaked up the rain, too damp, heavy, and impossible to dry with ordinary sunshine. Suddenly, from the far end of the dirt road leading into the village, a young figure appeared, carrying a canvas bag in one hand, a backpack slung over one shoulder, and a wide-brimmed hat casting shade over half her face. She was a newly assigned teacher, sent to the village's primary school to teach life skills. Noticing the old man sitting alone, she politely bowed and greeted him. "Good afternoon, sir. That was quite a heavy rain. Are you feeling cold?" The old man nodded and replied with a faint smile. As he often did, he muttered the familiar line without thinking. "With this much rain, my youngest boy's vegetables must be ruined again." The words made the young teacher stop in her tracks. she gently asked. "I heard from the villagers that your sons are doing really well. Why are you so sad?" It was the first time someone had asked him that, not to scold or reassure, but simply to listen. Feeling that someone was finally willing to hear him out, the old man began to speak. Slowly, he shared all the worries he'd carried in silence, the sunny days filled with concern for his eldest, the rainy ones burdened by fear for his youngest. When he finished, he let out a long sigh. "I know they're doing fine, but that's just how a parent's heart works. I can't help but worry." The teacher smiled, her eyes warm and understanding. After a moment of silence, she said gently, "I don't think you need to stop worrying, sir. Maybe you just need to change what you do with that worry." The old man furrowed his brow, confused. She continued, "What if you thought of it this way? When the sun's out, you can feel happy because your eldest is likely getting more customers. And when it rains, you can be glad your youngest's garden is getting watered. Instead of feeling sad for one, why not feel happy for the other? The weather stays the same, but the way you see it is what brings joy or sorrow." The old man fell quiet. For the first time in many years, he had no reply. Her words drifted into his mind like a cool breeze, reaching places he hadn't noticed in a long time. All this time, he had only looked at one side, the side of fear, without realizing that the other side always held hope. The young teacher stood and got ready to leave. Before walking away, she turned back with a gentle smile and said, "Sometimes, sir, all it takes is a change in perspective, and everything changes." That day, the old man said nothing more. But in his eyes, there was something different. As if, beneath the heavy clouds that had loomed over his heart for years, a tiny spark of light had just begun to glow. Ever since that conversation with the young teacher, the old man had grown more reflective than usual. Gone were the daily sighs and the familiar mutterings like, "Probably no customers for my eldest today," or "With this rain, the vegetables must be ruined." He didn't say much, but something had clearly shifted in his gaze, as if he were quietly rethinking everything he had heard. The next day, the sun blazed across the sky, casting golden light all over the brick path. As usual, he opened his mouth to say something, but stopped. He sat still. And then, for the first time in years, he smiled just a little. "Sunny today, probably lots of broken bikes. My eldest's shop must be busy," he whispered to himself. Surprised by his own words, he looked up at the sky. It was the same sunlight as always, the same weather he once blamed for upsetting his sons' lives. But today, it brought a different feeling, lighter, more comforting. That afternoon, he walked out back to check on the younger son's vegetable garden. The plants were still green, the vegetables fresh, though the soil was a little dry. But he didn't worry. He knew rain was coming tomorrow, and that it would nourish this garden the same way yesterday's conversation had nourished his soul. A few days later, a heavy rain arrived, tapping steadily on the old tiled roof through the night. The old man sat alone, sipping tea, nodding to himself. "A good soaking. My youngest's vegetables must be loving this. No need to water, probably growing strong already." That smile, gentle, at peace, was something the villagers hadn't seen on his face in a very long time. From that point on, something truly changed. Each day no longer revolved around sun or rain. Instead, he began to find reasons to feel joyful, no matter the weather. If it rained, he thought of the thriving garden. If the sun shone, he pictured his eldest busy with customers. For the first time in many years, his heart felt light. Villagers began to notice. The children running past no longer heard his usual morning grumbles. His porch grew quieter, not with silence, but with calm. Soon, people started calling him by a new nickname: the optimistic old man. Those who met him were surprised by his transformation. Some asked him what his secret was. He would simply smile, glance up at the sky, and say, "It's just sun and rain, really, only difference is how you choose to see it." It sounded simple, but that small shift had freed him from the endless days of self-made worry. He finally realized the weather hadn't changed, and his sons' lives were still the same. What changed was him. And that, more than anything, brought him the peace he'd been searching for all along. Ever since he changed his perspective, the old man's life took on a quiet lightness. Each morning, instead of sitting silently, counting the breeze with worry in his heart, he would wake up early to sweep the yard, water the small potted flowers on the porch, and brew a pot of hot tea while watching the sky and clouds roll by. Whether it rained or shone, he carried a gentle smile and a calm glow in his eyes. The villagers were surprised, some even found it hard to believe. They were so used to seeing a man consumed by worry, his face darkened by every passing cloud. Now, he seemed like a different person, cheerful, approachable, even cracking jokes for the neighborhood kids from time to time. And whenever someone asked what had changed, he would simply smile, stroke his silver beard, and say, "Nothing's changed at all. This old man just chose to think a little differently." That phrase slowly made its way through the village. It became a quiet reminder people would repeat when facing something disappointing. They would say to one another, "Try seeing it like the old man does, maybe things won't feel so heavy." One day, his eldest son came home for a visit, bringing with him a new wristwatch as a gift. Seeing his father so cheerful, so full of life, he asked, "Dad, something good must have happened lately? The neighbors say you've changed a lot." The old man chuckled and shared the story of his chance encounter with the young teacher. The eldest son listened silently, deeply moved. Such a simple idea, yet none of them in the family had ever thought of it. He hugged his father tightly and whispered, "Dad, seeing you like this, we're so happy. We never wanted you to worry so much because of us." That evening, after dinner, the whole family sat together under the porch. A light rain fell softly in the garden. The father looked out at the glistening drops sparkling under the porch light and said gently, "Rain makes the vegetables grow, sun brings bikes to fix. Every day has a reason to smile if you choose the right side to look from." That simple line was like the perfect ending to his long journey of change. From a father once consumed by endless worry, he had learned to live lightly, to let go of what he couldn't control, and to find peace in the simplest of things, his own perspective. It wasn't his life or his sons' lives that had changed. The sun still shone, the rain still fell. The garden still needed tending, the repair shop still had its quiet days. But one thing had changed: the father's heart. And that was enough.